Welcome to the regular meeting of the Planning Commission on Tuesday, April 25th, 2023. This meeting is called to order. Leslie, may you call the roll for commissioners who are present and not?
Yes, Commissioner Mercado.
Present.
Commissioner Previtali.
Present.
Commissioner Samudzi.
Here.
Commissioner Schock is absent tonight. Vice Chair Haveman.
Here.
And Chair Saudi.
Here. Now to the order of the agenda. Are there any commissioners that'd like to request changes to the order of the agenda? Okay, we will move on to the meeting procedures. The City of San Rafael remains committed for all participants in real time, whether that's from here in the chamber or from the comfort of your own home. I want to welcome all that are making time this evening to participate. Each member of the public will be provided 3 minutes for comment. Leslie, can you tell us how the public comment will work this evening?
Yes, thank you, Chair Saudi. This meeting is being recorded and streamed live to YouTube and through Zoom. Viewers can watch directly through Zoom using the link on the agenda or by dialing 669-444-9171 and then entering the meeting ID, which is 815-0028-1975, and then hit the pound sign. If you wish to speak during a public comment period and are participating virtually, use the raise the hand icon at the bottom of the screen or press *9 if you're phoning in. Displayed on the podium and the projector is a timer to help you stay within the allotted time frame. You are invited, though not required, to introduce yourself and say what part of San Rafael you live in, or if you're from outside of San Rafael. We are offering closed captioning for this evening's meeting on Zoom. Select the live transcript button on Zoom to enable this feature.
Thank you, Leslie. The following is a refresher on our meeting procedures. We begin with the staff report, followed by a presentation from the applicant team, if any. The commissioners will then have the opportunity to ask questions of the staff and the applicant. I ask the commissioners to make an effort to ask the entirety of their questions during this time prior to the close of public hearing. Members of the public will then be invited to speak. You will have 3 minutes for public comment. We'll start with those present in the chamber, then to those that are attending virtually. After public comment, I'll close the public hearing and bring the matter back to the commission for any discussion prior to requesting a motion and vote. Next on the agenda is urgent communication. This is the time for anyone with urgent communication on a topic not on the agenda to address the commission. Are there any members of the public that have urgent communication tonight?
If you wish to speak on something not on the agenda and you're in the audience, please come up to the podium. And if you are participating virtually, please use the raise the hand icon. I see there's no one phoning in.
Okay,
No
great.
one wishes to speak.
Yeah. Now we'll move on to the consent calendar, which has one item. Approval of the Planning Commission meeting minutes of April 11th, 2023. Are there any comments from the public on the consent calendar?
If you wish to comment on the consent calendar, step right up to the dais. And if you are participating virtually, please use the raise the hand icon. And no one wishes to speak.
Great. Are there any comments or edits from the commission? No? Okay. I'll request a motion on this item.
I'll make a motion to accept the consent calendar.
This is Commissioner Haveman. I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Would any of the commissioners like to discuss the motion? Okay, moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Yes, and before I take a roll call, I'd like to mention that you don't have to have been present at the last meeting to vote for the minutes. Commissioner Mercado.
Yes.
Commissioner Previtali.
Yes.
Commissioner Samudzi.
Yes.
Commissioner Schock is absent. Vice Chair Haveman.
Yes.
And Chair Saudi.
Yes. Now on to the only action item on today's agenda, adoption of the San Rafael 2023-2031 housing element. Amendments to the safety and resilience element of the 2040 San Rafael General Plan to comply with the recent changes to state law and rezoning of certain properties for consistency with the 2040 San Rafael General Plan. May we hear the staff report?
Yes, and I'd like to introduce Chris Hess tonight, who is our new Assistant Community Development Director and is here to introduce this item.
All right. Good evening, Commissioners. Wonderful to see you. My name is Chris Hess, Assistant Community Development Director. Director Judici asked me to fill in and give some comments, which I'm super proud to do. We are at the end of a very long journey, I know, that predates my time here with the housing element. There's been incredible work by our housing analyst, Alexis Captioning, who's here, Barry Miller, our consultant, Liz Darby, and many others to get this housing element ready and approved. Tonight, we are going to be just reviewing the final changes that the state has asked of us and approving those changes. But I do want to offer our department's thanks to a few different people. Chelsea Lee at the California Department of Housing and Community Development has been really great to work with and really responsive. And we're very grateful for all of the guidance through this process. The Housing Element Working Group, which included Commissioner Previtali, dedicated a lot of hours and provided a lot of valuable feedback on this. I understand there was 13 members who met over the course of a year or more on this. And we really appreciate and hopefully incorporated a lot of that feedback. And I really want to thank members of the public as well who commented on this. And we hope that your feedback was also incorporated into this housing element. The housing element is a real milestone for the city. It's one of our most important issues. We've been working on it for a long time, and we are very optimistic that this is the last stage of working on it and then finally getting to implementing it, which is what I'm here to do, what all of my colleagues are really excited to do. We are following up on a hearing that you had that was more detailed on the housing element in December. We won't necessarily recover all of that, but if you want information or want to review it, of course, we're really happy to answer those questions. So I'm going to turn it over to Barry Miller to present on the changes that we've made since you last saw the housing element. And thank you very much, Barry, for being here and doing this.
Thank you, Chris, and good evening, commissioners and members of the public. We have a short PowerPoint that I'm going to go through, so let me see if I can successfully share my screen here. Okay, looks like that is working, so we're going to move right into this. So tonight, as was just explained, following this presentation, we have an opportunity for the commission to ask any clarifying questions. Then there'll be an opportunity for public comment. Following the public comment, there'll be an opportunity for the commission to discuss the matter. And then we're going to ask for your action on 4 resolutions. The first dealing with the housing element, the second dealing with the safety element, and the third and fourth dealing with the rezoning of several properties. So just to start with the housing element, I think most of you are familiar with this from prior presentations, but this is a required element of every general plan in the state of California. Whether you're a city, a county, or a town, you have to have a housing element that includes policies and programs for how you'll meet the housing needs of your community. Unlike the other parts of the general plan, this element is submitted to a state agency, and that's the State Department of Housing and Community Development. And they are responsible for certifying the element and confirming that it complies with the government code. The time frame covered by the housing element is 8 years, and that's also set by the state legislature. So we're now moving into what's called the 6th cycle of housing elements, and it spans 2023 to 2031. So we're actually already in the planning period now, working to get this certified so that we can get to implementation. One of the key elements of this document is that the city has to demonstrate to the state that it's accommodating what's called its fair share of the region's housing need. And we'll explain what that is in just a minute. I wanted to, this isn't just to wow and impress, but it does show you that we've been at this for a year and a half, that there have been a number of planning commission meetings. Those are highlighted in yellow on the slide leading up to this time, starting in fall 2021. You can see the working group meetings there and some of the community workshops that were convened. But one of the things I want to point out is that there was actually a draft produced in November of this document. We're required to kind of go through 2 rounds on this. First, we prepare a draft, we submit it to the state reviews it and comments on it, then we revise it based on the state's comments, and then we adopt it. And then we hopefully get it certified after it's resubmitted. So the process, it's kind of a top-down process that starts with the state, where they determine the need for housing units in each region of California, and the regional councils of governments, which is ABAG in our case, take that need for the Bay Area in this case and assign it to each city and county in the region. So we have 101 cities and counties. Every one of those cities and counties gets a share of the total number, which was 441,000 units for the region. And then that's allocated to the individual cities. So here you see that our allocation for the last cycle that we're just ending was 1,007 units, and it was increased to 3 times that quantity for this coming cycle, 3,220 units, not just for San Rafael, all cities and counties, almost all cities and counties in the region saw pretty large increases. And we had just completed a general plan update, so we had anticipated and prepared for this increase and are now coming to you with a housing element that does not require changes to the general plan land use map, because we had anticipated those in our 2040 plan. So this quickly just shows you the contents of the document. It contains 6 chapters. The actual plan with the policies and programs is chapter 6. Those first 5 chapters are primarily data analysis, and they cover topics required by the state, as do the appendices at the end of the document. There are 4 goals in the housing element. You can see them on the screen here. These are substantially updated from the last housing element and focus on ending homelessness, promoting fair housing, ensuring the habitability and maintenance of our housing stock, and expanding housing choices, and really working on housing opportunities and production in the city. I went over this process a little bit earlier. I'm not going to go into detail on this, but there is this kind of looped quality to the steps. In other words, we go through the process of adopting our element. If the state doesn't certify it, we don't start from the beginning, but we do have to address any comments that they've made and bring this back to the Commission and Council for adoption. As Chris said, we've been working with our state reviewer pretty closely over the last 3 months and feel that we have a compliant housing element at this point that we're bringing to you and will be bringing to the council. So in your agenda packet for this evening, we included a copy of HCD's letter. It was received by the city on March 20th. We broke that letter down into individual comments. We kind of segmented it into 43 discrete comments. Some of the major themes of those comments were they wanted us to show that the sites that we've identified are realistic. Many of these sites have buildings on them. Some of them are zoned for commercial land uses, so it may be that they develop with commercial instead of residential. Some of them may have some constraints, and they wanted us to basically go through a list of criteria and show that the sites were real, including projects that are in the pipeline, projects that have been approved but not yet constructed, which represents a lot of the development potential in this housing element. They also wanted us to look at some specific constraints that we did analyze in our draft, but they felt that there was more the city could do to look at how we regulate things like group homes and residential care facilities and address some specific new state laws that, to be honest, are constantly changing, and keeping up with the state law and the way these things change is a challenge for all cities and counties. They also asked that we look at our water and sewer capacity and our subdivision standards to make sure that we weren't putting onerous requirements on new development. And finally, and probably most significantly, The state generally doesn't like programs where you say you're going to consider something, or you're going to study something, or you're going to evaluate something. They want action, and they included a number of comments that don't just study it, act on it. Or if you do study it, commit to implementing the findings and the recommendations once you're done. So we've made some strategic edits to the document. So I'm this sort of strategically how this goes. What you see on the screen now is actually just an excerpt from a page in their letter. What we do is we take each of the comments, and this is just one sample comment on small and large sites, and prepare a written response to that comment, and then make the changes in the document as track changes that are underlined. And you can see that yellow box on the side is actually telling the reviewer that this is a response to your comment number 10 about small and large sites that includes the data. And then we include the draft that has the changes accepted. So we send all of this material back to the state when this is adopted, the responses to their comments, the track change version, and the adoption clean draft. So just to quickly go through the changes, as we said in the introduction, we're not going to walk you through what's in each chapter of the housing element because we did that at your hearing in November. It is substantially the same document with the same sites and the same analysis. There are some additions to Chapter 2 on special needs housing, looking at what was accomplished over the last 8 years, some additional data in Chapter 3 on housing conditions and expiring subsidies, some additional information on fair housing laws in Appendix A, more changes to Chapters 4 and 5. Chapter 4 is where we go through all of our sites inventory. So when they're asking us, prove that your sites are viable, this is where we beef up the language in the text and we put in new tables and show them, yes, we have a track record of developing non-vacant sites. Yes, we have a track record of building affordable housing on sites that are less than half an acre in size, like the Homeward Bound project on Mill Street, like the Vivillon project that's going in now. And we edit the document to show those examples. Chapter 5 was the issue primarily related to different housing types. So we've responded to every one of the findings in HCD's letter. And then finally in Chapter 6 have included what I would say strategic changes, realistic changes to those programs. We can't promise the moon. We don't want to say we're going to do things that we don't have the resources to do, that we haven't studied or evaluated yet, but we have, I would say, put some more aggressive language on some of the actions in the document. Happy to answer questions about any of the specific edits. Again, I won't go through all of these, but these are some of the highlights of the changes. We actually sent our responses to HCD prior to this meeting, and our reviewer has given us the feedback that we are almost there. They feel like we're not 100% there, but we're confident that with a few very strategic additional changes that I would characterize as administrative and minor, we will make these edits prior to going to the City Council with this document for adoption. And I want to point out that the resolution before you this evening gives us the ability to make those minor editorial changes. Again, I'm happy to answer specific questions about the changes that the state has asked us to make to the current draft. So beyond this meeting, we will be incorporating any feedback from the commission, responding to public comment, and then preparing a draft that goes to the City Council. They're tentatively scheduled to take action on May 15th, but I do want to emphasize it's a draft until it's adopted. So if there are public comments, we're happy to accept those and take those through May 15th. After it's adopted, we'll be resubmitting it for a formal determination. And the state has 60 days to give us that determination, but we've been working closely with them at this point. It's a very small number of additional edits, and they have given us confidence that we will get a certification in an expedited way, less than 2 weeks after we submit this back to them. So I just want to point out there are a couple of other resolutions before you tonight. There is a state law that was passed a couple of years ago that requires that when you update your housing element, you have to include a few maps in your safety element that relate to evacuation and emergency preparedness. Specifically, the state requires that we identify all neighborhoods in our community that have only one means of ingress and egress. They don't explain what we're supposed to do with the map. They haven't issued that guidance yet, but we do have to prepare the map. It is a useful tool for emergency preparedness planning, and we're working with the fire department to make sure that this is included in the local hazard mitigation plan that's being updated right now. But we are including that in your packet this evening. It's the second resolution you'll consider, which adds an appendix to the general plan that includes a series of hazard maps showing what we're calling constrained parcel clusters. These are areas with more than 30 properties that are accessed only by one road in and out. There's also a map of street widths in that packet and a map of evacuation routes that was developed through the Zone Haven evacuation program. You also have two resolutions before you this evening recommending rezoning. So the first of those is for 86 Culloden Park. This is a property at the end of Culloden Park Road that currently has a split zoning designation. The west half of the property is zoned R20 and the east half is zoned PD. It's all zoned by a single individual, one property owner. There is no project proposed on this property. There's no development pending. This is simply a case of amending the zoning to match the general plan. I'm just going to click this and you'll see before and after. So that parcel on the east side will go from PD to R20. So that property that's to the west will have the same zone, all owned by one owner. The second rezoning resolution is 380 Marydale and 401 Marydale. These are two self-storage facilities located next to the Civic Center Smart Station. They were first identified as development opportunities in the 2013 station area plan that was done for the Civic Center Smart Station. And both of those properties have general plan designations of office. And the link to housing here is that the office general plan designation allows multifamily housing by right. So with an office zoning designation, either of those properties could develop with residential uses or office uses or a variety of commercial uses. The existing self-storage facilities on both properties would become legal, non-conforming uses after the rezoning. So the proposed zoning would change that to office. So all of these steps that you're being asked to take tonight constitute a project under the California Environmental Quality Act, and we're required to evaluate what's the appropriate CEQA document for this, which in this case is a addendum to the EIR that was adopted in 2021. So when you, when you do an addendum, you're essentially saying there's not a significant impact associated with the amendment to the general plan relative to the impacts that were already evaluated 2 years ago in the EIR that was done. There's an outline of what the project will do, and then a review of each of the impact categories, and there are no additional significant impacts. There are mitigation measures in that EIR that was adopted 2 years ago that will still apply. Environmental review will still be required for future housing projects as consistent with state law. So again, the resolutions here, number one recommends adoption of the housing element. It does allow for minor non-substantive revisions. And two is safety and resilience element. 3 and 4 are the zoning map amendments. And that concludes the presentation. Thanks.
Thank you. That was a lot of information packed into a really tight presentation. So are there any questions from the commissioners? I think we probably all have one or two questions. Commissioner Prevatelli, do you want to go ahead and start?
Sure. For that 86 Culloden Park, could you remind me what PD zone is?
Yeah, that's a planned development district. And when the subdivision was created adjacent to that property in the old quarry area, that was all developed as a planned development district. So there would have been a master plan that was done for that subdivision with its own specific zoning and development standards that's tailored to that site. Mm-hmm. And this parcel was broken off
Mm.
from that subdivision, but the zoning was never changed to reflect that.
Okay, great. And then are there any additional changes, like where the administrative changes that you were talking about? Those weren't in your presentation, so would you mind giving us just a quick synopsis of those?
Sure. Yeah, I think I have a slide that goes over those. Let me just
Okay.
see what they are.
Yeah, sorry if I missed that in your presentation.
That's okay. I didn't go through them one by one. They have asked us to provide an estimate of the number of units in the city needing rehabilitation. They have asked us to submit a form that they use for home key projects. It's a standard form. It doesn't have any material impact. They have asked us to look at eliminating the reasonable accommodation fee. This is a fee that's charged for if a disabled person is requesting a change from zoning standards because of a disability. There's currently a fee associated with the application, which they'd like to see go away. They have asked that we confirm that supportive housing is treated the same as other multifamily housing, which it is. We just need to make that clear, and to accelerate a couple of the zoning actions that relate to compliance with existing state law. That's where there's been a change in state law in the last few years, and we haven't caught up on those. So there's a few. The parking requirements for emergency shelter is an example.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner Purvatali. Would you like to go? Any questions? Okay, great. Commissioner, any of you commissioners have questions? No questions. Okay, I have a couple questions. In the staff report, it noted that the owner at Culloden Way, I'm going to say that incorrectly, had requested the change, although you mentioned there was no development requested. I was trying to figure out what those 4 parcels were. Could you bring up the map and kind of show those 4 parcels? And then is there any background from the conversations or from the request from the owner?
Okay, this is the image you're looking for? Just confirm?
Yeah, I was looking up the parcel numbers and it looked, at least the assessor's map was showing that like little zigzag is one. I'm just wondering, like, combined what the 4 properties are that the owner of those 2 properties.
Okay, can you confirm my cursor is visible to you all? I'm just,
It is, yeah.
okay, because it's this parcel where my cursor is, this parcel, the zigzag shaped parcel, and this parcel are all one property
Oh, got it.
owned by one homeowner.
Mhm.
And the zoning for the piece to the east right here and this zigzag shaped parcel are both PD right now. Because
Yeah.
they were part of this large subdivision, but they are actually they were purchased by the owner of number 86.
Yeah, so they're off of Fair Hills. They're not part of Fair Hills anymore.
They're only accessed by Culloden Park Road.
Okay. Cool. That was just one of them. And then I had a question on the housing element. How common is it for cities to have over 51% of their projects being non-vacant? Are we like...
It's the norm.
Okay,
yeah,
I just was curious about that.
At this point, most cities are looking at probably 80 to 90% of their housing development on non-vacant sites, particularly for the lower income units, because those are multifamily sites zoned for pretty high densities. And we really, in the Bay Area, don't have a lot of vacant land zoned for multifamily.
Great. Okay, those are the only questions I had. Great. That was quick and easy. Leslie, can we open the public hearing?
Yes, so if you're here to speak in the chamber, please walk up. I do have a request for this gentleman to go first, George. And if you wish to speak and you are attending virtually, please use the raise the hand icon. And everyone will get 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. My name is George Pagaloa. I live in Terra Linda. I've been in this city since '87. And I have appeared before this panel in the past. I'm not sure how many of you are still on it. I was involved with a group called Next Gen Marin, a group of young people who analyze housing issues related to availability to young people who grew up in the county but are not able to even rent a place when they get into the workforce. And also the attitude of many people in this county, where the main concern is the character of the neighborhood, which really is a way of saying we want the status quo to remain. And this group, in my opinion, has done a pretty good job in the past of listening to those complaints from those who are known as NIMBYs, but really taking into account the common good, which to me is the key thing that we need to keep focused on when we deal with housing and a whole bunch of other issues that relate to the welfare of the community. The work that needs to be done throughout Marin County to allow people who basically make this county work, which is public safety people, teachers, et cetera, provide them with affordable housing so that they don't have to commute from the East Bay or from far north or far away, is very important for the welfare and the stability of our communities, and serves clearly the common good. So it's very unfortunate the state had to issue mandates to get the cities in this county and the county itself to address these important issues. But I want to say publicly that I appreciate the work that this group has done in the past. I think you're ahead of the curve and doing much better than many other cities in this county. So I'm here to say thank you for your good work. I hope we will continue to address the concerns and keep concern for the common good at the top of our list. Thank you very much.
Thank you, George. Appreciate your comments.
If anyone else who's in the chambers wishes to speak, please come right up. Okay, next is Gregory Andrew.
Hello, can you hear me? My name is Gregory Andrew, and I live in San Rafael Meadows off of Marydale Road. I submitted a comment letter this morning. One comment on that letter was specific to the rezoning of 380 Marydale and 401 Marydale. While I am not on the face of it opposed to these rezonings, the devil is in the details, so I would like to know what the ramifications of these rezonings may be. They border residential neighborhoods, including San Rafael Meadows, and some of the characteristics of the neighborhood relate to safety, privacy, traffic, and parking. Three questions here. What building heights might these rezonings allow? How many stories could be allowed? Number two, will parking for any development be required to be on site, or might there be street parking allowed? And my third question is, how would access to the Civic Center station be achieved? Currently, there is a very rough path from 380 Marydale. Would it be required that it be improved? I hope you will answer these questions tonight. I would also like to propose that the city consider seeking a California Department of Water Resources grant under their Urban Streams Restoration Program to improve the branch of Galenas Creek that runs along this section of Marydale Road. I have experience in this area and would assist with it and seek to get the local homeowners associations to be partners with the city on such a grant project. Finally, I would like to state my general position and opinion on housing and the housing mandates in California, which is that it is my belief that the state housing mandates are nothing more than a money grab by developers, both private and those operating under the front of the so-called affordable housing organizations, including the organizations who are now suing municipalities over the state housing requirements. It is my belief that the state housing demand for the Bay Area are grossly inflated numbers, fueling ridiculous housing legislation. And I just wish that some of you local and state politicians would stand up and say enough and work to put a stop to this state push to put money into the pockets of developers. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If anyone else wishes to speak, either come up to the podium or use the raise the hand icon. And it looks like that's the end of public comment.
Great. Thank you, Leslie. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And before I turn it over to the commission for comment and discussion, can staff answer the following questions that were raised in the last comment? I think, concerning Marydale, I got, reviewing, letting us know what the allowable height is. I know, with density bonus, it's going to be more complicated, but I think we just should start with the baseline. And then parking requirements, access to Civic Center, how that's going to be approached. And then the last one was, pursuing a water resource grant for Galena Creek.
Sure, I'm happy to take a shot at those questions, and thanks, Mr. Andrew, for calling in. Just want to confirm again that there's no project proposed, so we have no details on what use might go there in the future. The existing uses can stay there indefinitely at this point. There would be office zoning applied to the site. And I also, again, want to emphasize it's already there in the general plan. So the general plan has already changed the designation of this to office. We're just aligning the zoning with what the current general plan designation is. The building heights in the office zone, I believe it would be a 36-foot height limit that would apply here. But again, if it's developed with housing, as you said, the density bonus laws would apply, and there would be opportunities to use waivers and concessions to go taller than that with the density bonus. 43 units per acre is the density that's allowed in that zoning district. So depending on the level of bonus, it would be above that level if affordable housing units were included. The parking requirements are going to depend on the land use. So if it's an office building, there will be a certain set of parking standards that are required. If it's residential, there'll be another set. If it's retail, there'll be another set. And the access to the Civic Center station would have to be determined at the time there's an application. It's at this point, there are some concepts in the Civic Station area plan for how access to the station would happen, but those are just concepts at this point. We're nowhere near the point where we have engineering drawings or a specific plan for that area. And there is, I should say, there's a plan for a plan. There will be a area plan or a precise plan for that part of San Rafael done in the coming years with grant funding. So we are likely to see some more detail about what might happen there in the future and some more guidance for development. I think the water resources grant sounds intriguing, and we would be interested in talking with Mr. Andrew more about that opportunity. So yeah, we'll follow up on that.
Thank you for going through those questions. I know when we have, we're looking at specific properties, even though they're just really trying to conform with the general plan. It feels like for some people, it feels like there's a project proposed, but we're really just trying to make things overlap. There's lots of properties that are going to be impacted. Okay, go ahead and turn it over to the commission for discussion and deliberation. Commissioner Samutsi, would you like to start?
Do you happen to have a slide where we walk through the specific changes? Because I'm just kind of curious about the comparison. I think there weren't too many from what I'm looking at in the actual exhibit 1B.
Okay. Just to confirm, were you looking for this information, or are we going back to the changes that are being made in this document relative to the one from December?
I believe it's the changes, the city response changes in red.
Okay, so that's
exhibit
further
1B.
back. Yeah. So that's actually on several different slides. So these are the changes to chapters
gotcha.
2 and 3, 4 and 5, and then 6. So it's really these 3 slides.
Okay, they're split out. Okay,
yeah.
So I guess I don't know, Chair, do you have a specific format that you want to run through? Because I know that I think we have 2 resolutions that we have to hit. Did you want to guide the discussion in a specific way?
Yeah, I think we can discuss. Yeah, maybe we should discuss the first resolution first.
Okay.
And then go through the second, because they are so different.
Yeah.
So we can go ahead and start with the housing element, and then we can move to the properties individually. Okay. And I think, yeah, thank you for suggesting that.
Okay.
I think it makes sense.
Okay. That makes sense. So I think so. I guess this maybe is a question for you, Barry. Is from what I'm seeing, there are not substantive changes that we need to make with these amendments, correct?
I mean, it's relative. I think I would say they're not substantive.
Yeah.
The policy changes are probably more substantive than the background information changes.
Yeah.
So, if we're changing a policy to say we're going to consider doing something to we're going to do it, that's a substantive change.
Yeah.
And there are a few of those.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think of a way to, I mean, it may be out of the scope of this conversation, but maybe for the benefit of the public to kind of outline potential, potential economic impact for some of these. So I think, for example, the incentives for the added ADUs or affordable ADUs is kind of one big one that I know is probably going to ruffle a lot of feathers. It's personally interesting to me because I think it's a really clever way of adding a lot of additional housing. I know that the last time we checked, there weren't really a lot of permits that were issued for it. So I'm wondering if that is designed to drive or further incentivize people to adopt, and whether we have any kind of way of measuring the potential increase that might bring.
I mean, yeah, the specific change that was made from the December version to this version related to ADUs is that we would have programs for affordable ADUs versus just market rate ADUs. And that's actually state law that we have to include that in our housing element. So at this point, it's premature to know what those incentives will be. So we don't know what the fiscal impact will be.
Yeah.
It's a good point that those are the kinds of changes that could have an impact down the road.
Yeah.
I think once we're studying them and looking at what makes sense, what can we afford as a community, that we would have a better sense of what the impact would be. And that would be covered in a staff report in a year or 2 years, whenever that program comes forward.
Okay. So I think what I'm hearing is that for the purpose of responding to the state, it's likely premature to have any of those kind of impact measures. But what we could do is, and maybe this is sort of up for discussion, is to identify like what are some key metrics or KPIs we would want to like keep an eye on as we look at some of the changes, not even just the changes, but just sort of the general housing element across the board. I don't know what current plans does staff have around that, and where might there be some benefit of some ideation from like planning commission, for example, on that?
Yeah, I can't speak to that tonight. I think that's an area where we can come back and talk to you about it, but it's probably not related to the adoption necessarily.
Yeah.
It's more of like the long-term plan for the department.
Okay, sure. So just throwing a comment out there, just for record, I don't know, Leslie, if this is something we can come back to as the commission to kind of provide further comment again at a later meeting, or how we might want to structure that.
I'm not sure how it will be structured, but I hear your desire to provide additional comments. So I will communicate with staff here as well as Director Giudice and see what opportunities are for the commission, as we move forward developing the programs that are hopefully going to be moved forward towards adoption tonight.
Okay. I have an idea for that.
Yep.
There's a yearly housing report that we received a few weeks ago, and there are a number of metrics in there. And so maybe what we could do is we could align the metrics in the housing element with the metrics in that report to make sure there's consistency.
Yeah, I'm looking for low-hanging fruit ways not to create sort of a ton of extra work. But I think that just from the sake of communicating out to community, I think it'd be good to be proactive about like, this is sort of, because I hear the sentiment from some folks about like, this is a money grab by developers, and all that kind of stuff. But there is a clear need and there's a clear like direct economic benefit to the city. And I think it would benefit a lot of people, or just like help change some of the narratives to for us to get ahead of like highlighting like how and why it's beneficial to be able to provide housing for teachers and public safety officers, et cetera. And why like simply keeping the neighborhoods the same way they are and they have been for 30 years, when that's what we're sacrificing, like just to make those numbers more real to people, or what that trade-off is more real to people.
Yeah, I'll just follow that. I couldn't agree more. And in fact, I think that is consistent with some of the metrics that we talked about adding to the housing report last time, things like tracking evictions, tracking homelessness. I think homelessness is maybe already tracked in there. I don't remember. Figuring out some way to track further integration of the community.
Yep.
Stuff like that. So, yeah.
Okay. So it sounds like we have some ideas, and I don't know, we can talk offline about what that might look like in a future session. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I want to comment on that just a little bit too. And one of the things in reading through the element that jumped out at me, and this is a little bit of advertising, I think. When you looked at the housing burden in the element, it compares San Rafael with Marin with the Bay Area, right? And frankly, we look pretty good in that comparison. But I think that we're a difficult area to live in, comparing ourselves with more difficult areas to live in. And the right comparison might be with easier areas to live in. Right? So people understand that there is a significant issue here. And it's not just a grab by developers.
Yeah, I'll add on to all these things, and I agree wholeheartedly with what has been discussed. Some of the comments we got from 1515, which really touched on a lot of issues that we're looking at tonight. Unfortunately, we don't have the amount of public engagement that we had for that one project. We could just have proactive discussions with the public on these items before they become, adopted. But I will say that some of the concerns that were brought up, specifically around the economic impacts and where what our needs are, we would really benefit from having those numbers. And I think what we need to be able to communicate is that the landscape of housing and housing needs is very different than what it was 30 years ago. And that, they're not just even the whole culture around how we obtain housing is very different. And I know there's a lot of nuance in that, but I think that's an important thing to communicate. As we look at the numbers, we can be able to say, like, this is why, there's no like workforce housing and a GI Bill credit for, certain people. There's not, people can't afford mortgages. So we have to be flexible and be able to create housing. And then the other point is really being able to drive economic growth and encourage, I think it's tough for people to hear, like, we want to encourage developers to build. And that sounds like a negative term, but we really need to partner with developers and have constructive conversations with them so that we can meet the city's goals and also have the public participate and engage in that process. Because, I think, unfortunately, public engages once a project is like being adopted and approved. It's not that where they're like paying attention to the overall, these kind of overall discussions. And everyone's busy. I understand why not everyone can sit in these meetings and read hundreds of pages, but those are just some of my thoughts around this whole situation. Anyone else have any closing comments or discussion?
I'll just mention I'm actually happy that they asked for the local hazard mitigation plan map because one of the things I've really been worried about is those neighborhoods with only single ingress and egress roads, and because of fire, obviously. And I'm hoping that the city, I'm not suggesting that we put this into the plan or whatnot, but I'm hoping that the city can use those maps to actually develop alternative extra egress points that would only be used under emergency circumstances for fire for people to evacuate. So I've been
like
hoping,
fire roads and such.
Yeah, like a fire road, but with public access for the neighborhood. So I've been hoping to see that happen for a few years now, actually. So yeah.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Mercado, do you have anything you want to say?
Not really. I mean, there's not much. I appreciate it. I think I've maybe have been the longest here from some of the initial. So I think this is a good wrap up. I like the post sort of adoption. What happens then? I think leaving the public open-ended on that is not good. So an analysis will be helpful. On the first two resolutions, no, I mean, I think it's fine overall. Thank you.
Great. Should we then move on to the two rezoning properties, the second resolution? Are there any commissioners that have any comment or discussion on those resolutions? I think they're pretty straightforward. We're just trying to comply.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think the rezoning is interesting. I didn't anticipate that. I know that part of what HCD is doing is trying to encourage more of a specific analysis to maximize sort of the development potential. I think that there's a public perception issue that's going to come pretty strong on that. And I don't think it's the city's position that it was done really because sort of an election to do so. What I heard today was that was something that had to be analyzed to comply with the general plan. And I kept thinking, what if that wasn't done? If the rezoning is not done, what happens to the housing element? It's a question. I'm not just sort of like theoretic, but I'm just wondering, like, what happens if the rezoning is not done? We're not in compliance with the HCD's requirements for the housing element, correct?
Now, we could meet the RENA number without those two sites. I think we saw this as an opportunity to bring the zoning in line with the general plan, which something really should have probably been done 2 years ago when the general plan was adopted. But at that point, you know, the plan had been going on for 3 years, and it was actually already, there were other ordinances and ordinance changes and zoning changes, things relating to large family care centers that were all going along with that. So this is a change that didn't happen at that time. And since it would create an opportunity for housing, this seemed to be an opportune time to bring it forward. And it is already in, I mean, there is that issue of it already being part of the general plan.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So I just think it's interesting how that came out. And I feel like it's part of what the housing element is intended to do, right? Which is encourage the analysis of sites to see is it developable or not. But I think I keep wondering, we've gone through this cycle. You said it was 8 years. 8 years is going to come up quickly. There's not much vacant land. Development is very difficult to do. What happens in 8 more years when the RENA number goes up? It's a really interesting issue. So again, there's no answers tonight, but I just feel like that's what's triggered in me. And looking at the specific zone change raised that of, oh, wow, are we going to be that granular going forward? Maybe.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. They seem like very specific, very different property situations. And I think the Fair Hills one stood out to me in particular. I mean, I'm a resident of Fair Hills, and I know that, you know, that neighborhood doesn't really lend itself to the density that we're trying to gain in other parts of the city. But, you know, there is like a history with that area. And if there's, you know, one owner that has 4 property sites, it may, like Commissioner Mercado said, raise public suspicion. I would say that. Any other commissioners? You know what the history is. You're laughing.
Did you have a comment?
No.
Okay. I just
Okay.
wanted to mention those properties on Marydale. I'm familiar with those. I don't know if you guys are familiar with those storage facilities over there. But yeah, in my opinion, it's a great place for housing. So, just looking at, you know, 43 units per acre, which is the density bonus criteria. I was just doing some math here. So 1 acre is 43,000 square feet. So I'm not suggesting that you're going to have, you know, 43 1,000 square foot units, but that's a way to sort of think about it. So it's not like I mean, personally, I don't foresee us having, you know, terribly tall buildings there. Hopefully, you know, that would be my desire. But yeah, I think that it could be done in a really a smart way.
So I guess maybe piggybacking on that, because I know that there are a lot of public suspicion, anxiety voiced about like the potential size of those buildings.
Mhm.
But I think doing that napkin math and you think about like what will actually pencil in that particular area, given what the market rate prices are, et cetera, I think that provides like a natural cap on how large, you know, any development is going to be in that particular area. And I know that may not be satisfying to some people. They want to say like, you know, only single family houses forever, whatever. But I think, you know, from my standpoint, you know, it's not really going to be viable to build a 12-story building there anyway.
Agreed.
And if we allowed for that many units of single family housing, the same people would come, we'd have public comment about impeding on our open space and, you know, and touching and developed land. So we're kind of in a situation where we have to decide how we're going to go and what we're going to prioritize.
And maybe to emphasize again to the public that doing nothing is no longer an option because the state has taken that out of our hands. So I know that won't preclude people from still complaining about it, but just to kind of throw that out there that, you know, it's not an option to just say, you know, developers are evil, I can't do anything.
Yeah. And I think, you know, when we, in the last meeting, we had one person from the public come up and say, look, we're going to have to do this. And then we need to figure out how to make it work. And I think that's where we're at. We know what our requirements are. We know what we're kind of given. We know what the downtown precise plan says, what the 2040 plan says. So let's try to see where we are most exposed and try to make it easier on everybody. So would we like to get a motion on these resolutions, or are there any more comments? Okay.
Just a quick discussion on that. Would we want to, maybe this is a Leslie question, in terms of framing that sort of follow-up discussion around metrics, would we need to include that in this resolution, or we can just have like a side conversation to bring it up later?
That should be a side conversation.
Okay, cool.
And we can meet on that. It doesn't have to be public. Like if we don't want to take up the time of our commission hearings and we want to have workshops, is that something we can do and then bring that back to the public and report on it?
We can definitely do that.
Okay.
There's different avenues. So I think it will take a few discussions to get, you know,
Yeah.
to make sure that we are getting the discussion that we need from you all.
Yeah.
The public. So.
I think that's becoming more apparent that we need to really work through these issues outside of like project specific discussions. Great. Thank you, Commissioner Smitsy.
Okay, then so back to the first resolution. So we're doing one at a time, right?
We can do both.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, then I would move to approve both resolutions as written.
I'm going to just clarify that there's, hold on, 4 resolutions, yes.
Yeah,
there's Four- 2
topics for resolutions.
Oh, okay.
Could they be done one at a time? Sorry, it would just be cleaner for us. I think. if
Yeah,
they're
we
done one
could
at a
we
time.
could do that.
Thank you.
Okay.
So the first one is the resolution recommending City Council adoption of the 2023 to 2031 housing element. It's page 11 of 94 of the packet.
So for the first resolution, for the adoption of the San Rafael 2023-2031 housing element, I move to approve as currently written.
Commissioner Saudi, I'll second that.
Right.
Leslie, can you
Yes.
provide a roll call on that?
Commissioner Mercado,
Yes.
Commissioner Prevatali,
Yes.
Commissioner Samudzi,
Yes.
Commissioner Schock is absent, Vice Chair Haveman,
Yes.
and Chair Saudi.
Yes. Can I get a motion on the second resolution?
And the second resolution is recommending City Council adopt amendments to the safety and resilience element.
I'll make a motion to adopt that. This is John Prevatali.
Commissioner Samudzi seconds.
Can we get a roll call on that second one?
Commissioner Mercado,
Yes.
Commissioner Previtali,
Yes.
Commissioner Smootsy,
Yes.
Vice Chair Haveman,
Yes.
and Chair Saudi.
Yes.
The next resolution is a recommendation to City Council for the rezoning of what is essentially 380 and 401 Marydale. Oh, no, I skipped one. I apologize.
Yes.
Go back. The next resolution is a recommendation to City Council for the rezoning of the properties adjacent to 86 Culloden Park.
As Commissioner Haveman, I move that we accept that resolution as written.
Great.
Commissioner Smootsy seconds.
Okay. Commissioner Mercado,
Yes.
Commissioner Previtali,
Yes.
Commissioner Smootsy,
Yes.
Vice Chair Haveman,
Yes.
and Chair Saudi.
Yes. Okay, let's get that last one.
Right. Back to it. This is the resolution recommending to City Council the rezoning of 380 and 401 Marydale.
I'll make a motion to approve the fourth resolution.
Commissioner Haveman, I'll second the motion.
Great. Commissioner Mercado,
Yes.
Commissioner Previtali,
Yes.
Commissioner Samudzi,
Yes.
Vice Chair Haveman,
Yes.
and Chair Saudi.
Yes. I
Did we do the SB 99 bill? SB,
Yeah, that was the safety element.
got it.
Right.
The hazard stuff.
Great,
Okay.
too. Motion's passed.
Motion is passed. Thank you.
Thank you. I also wanted to just acknowledge that we did receive some correspondence relating to the housing element from a couple of community-based organizations earlier today, and we are going to consider those comments as we bring this forward to the council. Thanks.
Chair, could I just thank the folks that put this together quickly?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, I just wanted to extend my heartfelt thank you to Alexis and Barry, and also Director Judici, and also Liz Darby for really leading an amazing effort here that, as you mentioned, I think was over a year and a half in the making. So thank you so much. I really enjoyed working with you, and I can't imagine it being run in a more effective, efficient, and really empathetic way. So thank you very much. It was a great experience.
Thank you. I know it's a lot of work behind the scenes. Nobody sees it all in the one report. We appreciate it. Leslie, can we move on to the director's report?
Yes. So just a few items coming up for hearing. So I'm going to start with Planning Commission. We actually will not have a meeting for the first one in May. I think it's May 9th. So maybe one in the 2nd of May. As you know, Jill Darby is our new planning commissioner. She had some previous engagements that she wasn't able to attend, but hopefully by the time we have the next meeting, we'll be a full house. And as I emailed you, I will be kind of asking for a roll call a little ahead of time. We've had some close calls just to ensure we have a quorum. I am checking in on you, but only to just for good public process.
So question on that then.
Yeah.
So the following meeting is the 23rd.
9 + 14, yes.
Okay, cool.
Yes. City Council, May 1st is the revocation of the use permit for George's Nightclub. That was appealed, so that will be going to City Council on May 1st. On May 8th, there's a special meeting and the appeal of Planning Commission's approval of the 1515 4th Street will be heard. The housing element and all the 4 resolutions that you passed today will be going to the City Council on May 15th. So your work is moving forward to City Council. So excellent work. It's unfortunate about the 2 appeals, but that's part of the public process. So,
Can you remind me of the date for the 1515? I think I got it confused.
It is the 8th. It's
The
a
8th.
special meeting.
Oh, it's a special meeting. Okay, got it.
So there'll be 3 Monday council meetings in a row, the 1st, the 8th, and then the 15th. And that is all I have.
Thank you, Leslie. Do any commissioners have any communication they'd like to provide?
I do. As Commissioner Haven, I was at the Design Review Board meeting last week, and two items were considered. One is 323 Prospect Drive, which I think I mentioned before. It's a home up on top of a hill, retaining wall issues. I don't think it comes before us. And the other will come before us, I'm pretty sure, is 50 Marydale. It's a 12-unit apartment building, sort of tucked away in the woods between 101 and Marydale, down where North San Pedro intersects just west of 101. It's an interesting development. I think it's a good idea, but it's not without some issues, least of which is handicap access.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Privatali. Any other commissioners have any? Sorry, caveman. I don't know why I said Privatali.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I think we're all like, we're going to get out of here in, 15 minutes.
I have a
Yeah.
quick one. I just want to thank Barry. It's been a while. We're probably done on the housing element, hopefully. So, but thank you. I just feel like for so many years now, at least that I've been here, you've done such a good job of presenting stuff. I didn't want to focus it just on that item. I kind of wanted to throw a general shout out your way, which is why I'm reporting it now. So just thanks again for everything.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
I'll second that. Thank you both. And I mean, there's a whole other team. It's been really good experience and really collaborative experience as well. So that's been awesome. Okay. Is there any other communication? Okay, then I will go ahead and conclude this meeting, and it is adjourned.
Recording stopped.